Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel where the gnomes live. This is Sharon Oyella, and today we're going to be building some miniature bead lamps. Now the miniature bead lamp has been floating around in the miniature world for many years. I have no idea who to credit for the idea. It's a brilliant idea. I think they look really cute. I have never actually made one until just the other day, so I thought I'd throw a tutorial together and show you how I've done it. I don't think there's many tutorials out there for them, although looking at them they're pretty self-explanatory. If you do type in miniature bead lamps, you'll most likely see the ones with the push pin on top for glass. So those clear push pin, I just took the nail out of it. So at the very end of this video, I'm going to show you how to take the nail out, and we'll throw this one together really quick. What I've done is come up with this idea for the glass. So this glass here is made with fish tank tubing, and I have a tutorial that will show you how to shape it and how to keep that shape. And that video is popping up on your screen. It's in the iCard here. It will also be in the description box below. In that same video, using the same steps I made to get this glass for the lamps, I'll also show you how to make one of these bottles and close up the bottom and all of that good stuff. So that would be a fun one to watch if you're interested. If you don't have access to fish tank tubing, you can use these push pins like I said. If you can find yourself some clear beads, you could stack them top and bottom, or a cylinder. Any clear cylinder would work. So let's quickly talk about the supplies. Each of my lamps got a wire inside them, and this is a 20 gauge wire. I found this in the floor section. I either used one of these or I used a corsage pin, depending on which lamp I was making. These little pins here can be cut easily with the pliers. So if you don't have any of that florist wire, then you can use a stick pin. I also use pliers, embroidery thread for the wick, but that's not necessary. Of course I used the beads and an assortment of bead cap sizes. I'm going to talk about that in the next clip. And the glue. Now the very first lamp that I made was this one here, and I used tacky glue to put everything together. That's only held together with tacky glue, and it worked like a charm. It's not as strong as my other lamps, but it can still be used for light play or display. After I built that little lamp, then I ordered some jewelry glue. This is jewelry and metal glue, and it's Aleene's. I got it on Amazon for about $7. That is amazing stuff. Although you don't want to put it on your fingers because you won't get your fingers apart, but it really, really works. So if you want a solid little lamp that can be roughly played with, or if you drop it, it's not going to fall apart, then I would suggest getting that jewelry glue. I should actually show you the sizes of these bead caps that I'm using. I'll show you on the ruler. So what I did was I went to the thrift store and I found a bracelet that had great big beads on it. It was this one here. And around those beads were these bead caps, and that's what I was interested in. It cost me like $1 or something like that. And it had all these wonderful bead caps. And these ones right here, which are a ½ inch across, I believe. Yep, ½ inch. I couldn't find them on Amazon. I searched, maybe I'm not searching for the right thing because I'm not a jewelry maker, but keep those in mind. Go to your thrift store and see if you can find one of these, because these ones here actually can be bent with the pliers, or even with your fingers. You can bend them with your fingers, and you can bend them up around the glass. So they actually hold the glass in place just like a real one. Like a real life-size one. How cool is that? But if you only can find these regular sized bead caps, which I find these all the time at Walmart, you can glue the glass on top of that. It'll work just fine. So I'm just picking out the bead I'm going to be using for my next lamp. And before I get started, I'm going to make sure that the beads and the caps and any of the spacers that I've chosen will fit on the wire that I'm using, or the pin that I'm using. So let's take a look at one of these lamps again. So for this lamp here, I have a large bead cap on the bottom, then I have a bead, and then I have a smaller bead cap on top of that, then I have a spacer, and then I have my bead cap on top. And then this little piece here that turns the lamp up or down, you can either make one with a bead and a wire, which I've started here. I've just glued it together already. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Or we can use one of these pieces here, one of those looped pieces. So what I would do to get started is just cut free So I want this part right here, the smallest little loop there. So I'm just going to cut that one, and now I can pull it out. There we go. Just going to close this up a little bit more. I'm thinking right about there, and there's our little turn piece for the lamp. So I'm going to set that one aside for now. Okay, and then inside there, you don't have to do this part. It's a small detail that most people won't even notice. But I had also on hand these little solid caps, and I actually pulled embroidery thread through there for the wick. And then for the glass, like I said, you can use that tutorial that I have to shape the glass, or if you don't want to do that, we'll just cut a piece and you can make it any length that you want. If you choose to use a piece that you don't shape, and it's just going to be a skinny little tube like this one, then I would use a smaller bead cap for it to sit on top of. So in the next clip I'm going to be making this lamp here, and I used the shaped glass, and for that one I used a 1/2 inch bead cap. So just keep those things in mind as you watch the next clip. Alright, so this glue says instant grab, but it's really not. It's not instant grab at all. But once it does grab, it really holds on. So I just put glue on the underside of that larger bead cap, drop my pin in there. Now I can put my bead right over top of that, or I could put a small bead cap upside down. And then a little bit of glue on the inside of that cap, and I can drop my bead in there. Alright, so for this guy, he's got a great big hole in the middle of that bead, so what I'm going to use is the end of a connector. This is a connector for jewelry. I've already used the other side of it right here. So that these two pieces, this one and this one in here, screwed together and held a necklace closed. So this one has a little bit on the end that's going to fit nicely inside that bead. Look at that. Like it was meant to be. Now I'm going to drop a little bit of glue on top of there. And now I can drop my 1/2 inch bead cap upside down. This one is going to be shaped around my glass. So I'm going to let this dry now, guys. Make sure everything's nice and straight up and down. I'm going to let this dry for about 20 minutes or so. Just make sure that everything's straight before you leave it dry, otherwise it's going to dry permanently crooked. Because once that glue is dry, you can't break it apart. So everything is dry enough now. I can cut this wire free, and I just bring it down to the top of that cap. So from here, I could just shape the cap around this glass, but before I do that, I'm going to add in one of my solid caps here, and I'll drop a little bit of glue in there. I can glue this wick on over top, and I'm going to show you that in the next little lamp that I make, or I can just pull it right through this cap. And for that I'll need a little bit of help, so I'll just grab a pin. I'm going to cut the bottom free. I'm going to stick some glue inside there. Now remember what I said, you can't get this stuff off your fingers once it's on there, so be really careful about that. I'm going to put it right through that wire that's sticking up, and then I'll push it down. And then I would just let that dry for a few minutes before we carry on. I just cut the wick down, trim it up to the size that you want. If you have a black felt pen, then you can use that, or a little bit of paint on top of that wick, make it look like it's been used. If you have a longer wick, it's better to leave it dry, that black paint dry, before you put the glass on, otherwise you can mess up your glass. And then I gently squeeze together around that glass. Now all that's left is our little turny thing. I'm super lucky because I have a little hole I can shove this into. When I make the next lamp, I'll show you what to do if you don't have one of those. So there was a little hole in there I could shove that into, so I was lucky there. In the next lamp I'm going to show you what to do if you don't have one of those. So let's just leave that dry before we move on. I'm popping in with an edit because I didn't figure this part out until the very end of the video, and in case you stop the video before you get there, you'll never see what I've done. So that little pin can be glued in between this cap and that cap, it makes it a lot easier. You can just glue it right in between there. Works really well when you're using the jewelry glue. So there's one I did. All depends on the look you're going for, of course. You can put that pin up here. I think it looks good up there as well. So all depends on what you like better, but there's another option for you. So you can see once that glue is dry, it is stuck in there. There's no getting that out. Okay, so the next lamp, I'm going to recreate this little one here. And when I made this one, I did not have this special glue. And what I used was 20 gauge wire. So I have 3 of those little bead caps in there. I use tacky glue. Now I would prefer to use this glue, but I'm just going to show you that it can be done with tacky glue if you don't have any of that special glue on hand. I used a wooden bead for this one here. So I just put tacky glue there and my bead. You know what would make this so much easier on myself, which I didn't think of the first time around, was a little strip of masking tape. So I'll just wrap this around. So that just holds the wire up, straight up and down, instead of flopping from side to side. And I'll stick some glue on this bead cap, and I'm going to slide it down over top of this wire. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. I'm not going to play around with it while it's still wet because things will just get all wonky looking. And give it about a half an hour. So that's been sitting for about a half an hour, and that feels pretty sturdy. Doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart or anything. Okay, so for the top part, we can put a spacer in between. I think I'll leave the spacer off. You can, of course, play around with all of these ideas. And yeah, there's endless things that you could do. So I'll just slide this down. So my friends, I have lost that little wire that I showed you at the beginning of the video. No idea where it ended up. That's okay. I just took a little tiny bead. I don't know if you can see the shape there. It's round and it does good for a little handle. So this is what the final look would have looked like. And you can see I laid it across inside and underneath the glass. And again, I did that with tacky glue. So of course this needs a little bit of time to sit. I'm just showing you how I did it. And then I would let that glue dry, fully dry, and then you can play around with it. You can cut the wire shorter, and then we could install it. So obviously that's not going to work for this video. So let's work again with one of those pins. I'll get one of these pins out of here. So here's one of those pins. I cut it and I bent the end with my pliers. So what I can do is actually lay it inside there and push it down into that hole of the bead cap. But I can also bend this wire over and use this for a little turny handle thing. So I could bend it over and glue on one of those little beads that I was just showing you. But I'm not going to do that with this one. It's just an idea. And there's a little wire sticking in there that you can use as the wick. You can totally do that. Or you can do what I said earlier and just glue this inside. And I just realized it's so much easier to just pull this through this bead cap because it's a bigger bead cap. So I'm just going to pull this through. I'm having troubles getting it to stick on camera. It keeps sticking to my finger, so I'll do it this way because it's driving me a little bit bonkers. You didn't see all the ones I cut out. I had cut little wicks and tried to glue them on top. It worked before, but it's not working today, so we will do it this way then. There's always more than one way to do things. Absolutely. Alright, let's try this again. Put a little bit more glue on there. And there we go. Whew, okay. We got it that time. Now I'll cut this wick, and again, this wasn't even necessary. You can just add a little dot of black paint on top of that wire that's in there, and it would look like wick. Alright, I am ready to attach the glass and the little turn thingy. So I'm going to use a little bit more tacky glue in there. So I dropped some glue inside, and I'm going to lay in this little metal piece, the little thing that's supposed to be a turn handle. Just pop it right down into that hole in the middle of the bead cap. And now I'm going to pop on my glass. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a little slit in here. That's what I'm going to do. Where is my X-Acto knife? Okay, I'm going to make a little slit in here for my little handle. A little nick out of there. We are in the next morning. Good morning, good morning. I've already had my coffee, and this is glued in there really nice. So yesterday, that was something that I just figured out as we were going along. On these straight tubes, the ones that you didn't shape, when you're gluing them inside the bead cap and on top of a little wire, you'll need to make a little slit on the side, and that will make it a lot easier for you for everything to catch at the bottom of this plastic piece. So make a little notch for that handle, and it glues in there perfectly. On these ones that I shaped, there's no need to do that because the glass actually sits just on the outside, well, on the inside edge of the bead cap, and there's room under it for the handle. Before I go, I wanted to show you one more thing. I saw online a lot of these tinier bead lamps made with push pins, the glass part. So I want to quickly throw one together before we leave this video and show you what that looks like. So here's that little one. I'm throwing it together. I'm using the jewelry glue. So much easier and quicker. And for this little turny handle thing, I'm going to sandwich it between these two caps. And I didn't think of that on the other ones. I just thought of it now. So we learn as we go. Okay, also keep in mind that the little wire in there is going to be too long for that push pin, so I'm just going to cut it. Okay, so as we learned in the last clip, you got to make sure that wire is not sticking up on top of this. So before putting on the top cap, I would cut that wire down. And now we can't stick this in there because there's a wire in there, so we need to remove that little stick thing. So what we're going to do is melt it and count to about 7 or 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll see if that works. Yep, probably could have done it on 5. Okay, we are going to glue this, and now we can put our pin on top. So it's all dry now and ready to be displayed in the dollhouse. I think that's a nice alternative if you don't have any the plastic tubing on hand or any glass to use. Then the top of a clear push pin will work. And for the glass part, the ones that don't have this sort of cap to hold them in, then you'll have to glue them in, like I said, and that tacky glue works great. You can, if you pull on it hard, it will come off, but just for sitting in there and for display purposes, tacky glue works just great. But if you do want it to be permanently attached where you can't take it off at any time, then you can use jewelry glue. That does work. I used it on this one here. I think it clouds up the bottom a little bit, but someone could play with it and it won't fall apart. A little bit of cloudiness on the bottom, but that's no big deal. Alright guys, I think we're done. I hope you found the video helpful, and if you did, please give the video a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. If you do make one of these lamps, I would sure love to see it. Post pictures on my Facebook page, Where the Gnomes Live. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you super soon.